The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Perspectives. My name is David Schoneman. I'm your host on this program. On Perspectives, we take a look at a wide variety of issues that are important to folks here in Nashua and throughout the state, especially as we're in a run-up to the election on November 6th. We have just less than 3 weeks to go until Election Day. We want to make sure that you, the viewer at home, are informed. A few days ago, on October 15th, there was a candidate forum, the first of 3 candidate forums, that was held by the Chamber of Commerce, Riviera University, and the Nashua Telegraph. In that forum, I had a chance to debate my opponent, Cindy Rosenwald. Kevin Avard, Senator Avard, had a chance to debate his opponent, and we had 2 candidates for executive council who also had a chance to square off. We had 2 minutes to answer a bunch of questions, and a lot of times it's hard to get information out in a 2-minute time slot. So we're going to take a look at some of these questions a little more in depth today. I'm here in the studio today with Senator Kevin Avard. He's a Republican running for District 12 in the state Senate. I'm running for District 13. We're working together a lot. We both will be responsible for all of Nashua, essentially. District 12 is wards 1, 2, and 5, plus some of the western towns. And District 13 is the rest of the wards, wards 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. So between the 2 of us, if we're both elected, we'll be serving the voters here in Nashua. Senator Avard, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks. Hey, you're doing this like you've done this before.
I've done it a couple times before.
Yeah.
Of course, you have your own show, too. Had a chance to be on your show. It's always fun to be here and to have a chance to talk with the folks at home.
Yeah, that was an interesting debate. It is kind of frustrating, though, when you go over about 1,100 bills and just in one session, and you kind of funnel it down into 2 minutes. It's almost impossible. So thanks for inviting me and letting us talk a little bit about some of the questions that they had.
Sure. There were about 50 people in the audience. I think many of them might have been campaign workers. When we drove into the parking lot,
it was a gauntlet, wasn't it?
It was a gauntlet.
Yeah.
All the signs out there for the opposing party.
Yeah.
We didn't have any on our side, but we don't do things that way. We tend to, I think, exchange ideas and stand up and try to talk to folks.
The Republican Party really is a big umbrella.
It is.
And you'll find that a lot of times that there's a lot of disagreement even within our ranks because there are a lot of independent thinkers.
Right.
And that's refreshing.
It is.
We don't take orders from on high or from the party. Basically, you have a group of very mixed population, and it's actually growing more and more.
That's good.
Yeah.
In the run-up to the campaign after the primary, Senator Morse had a sit-down for all the senators. You were there, and all the candidates.
Right.
And Senator Bradley also has had a number of training sessions. And in that meeting with Senator Morse and with Jeb Bradley, they both, as leadership in the party, in the Senate, they said continuously, we're not here to tell you how to vote or how to think.
Right.
We just want to make sure you have the information you need to make a decision that best suits your constituents.
And I've known that in practice, when we're in caucus, it's the same thing. And we'll do our voting, and hey, I can't vote for this. Sorry, this violates my or I'm going to vote for trains, and I'm the only. Well, there were 2 of us in caucus that said, yeah, I'm for trains, and somebody will go choo choo, whatever. But I said that to say this: that there is the ability to break ranks.
Right.
And it's not like we're all fall in step.
Right.
You do what your conscience tells you to do.
Right.
And under their leadership, I found that to be extremely refreshing. And I thought it was just going to be the opposite, but it isn't.
I sort of expected the opposite too, not having met those gentlemen before, but I was very encouraged to hear that.
Yeah.
The other side I don't think operates that way at all. In fact, I drive around town looking at some of the lawns, and I can see signs in the yards, and they have every every Democrat sign that's out there.
Yeah.
And that's because they're gonna march in step.
They vote in block.
They're going to vote in block. Whereas I see your signs on one yard by itself, or my sign on the yard. But sometimes you and I are in the same yard. We're not in the same district, but we know some of the same folks, and we're on some of the major arteries. So I think that in itself indicates that we tend to be a little more independently thinking.
And I think a lot of independent voters know that to be true as well, and that's why I think we appeal a lot to them.
Yes.
So and not every Republican's going to vote for me. It's
probably
just
won't vote for me either. We're trying to do the best we can for the largest number of people.
Right.
Looking out for folks at home. Let's take a look at one of these questions. This is the first question I thought was very interesting. I'll read the entire question. We don't need to deal with exactly what was covered here, but it had to do with economics. It says the city of Nashua is unique in a variety of ways as a state Senate District 12 or 13, which are the two districts that cover Nashua. Key issues within the city are arts and the economy. What hindrances do you see to Nashua becoming a larger part of New Hampshire's tourism economy? And what do you think will be the economic benefits of a performing arts center? Now, my view on that, I took a look at the overall economy, and this is dealing specifically with tourism, which is an important part of economy in the state. For instance, way up north, Coas County, that's probably the largest part of their economy. But down here in the southern tier, manufacturing is actually a larger part of our economy.
Right.
We employ more people, higher paying jobs.
Retail as well.
Retail certainly is. But we have high-tech manufacturing here.
Right.
You mentioned Worthen Industries before the show. We have BAE. We have Rapid Machinery. These are companies that are making some high-tech parts for high-tech industries, oftentimes the defense industry.
Right.
And there's a lot of good-paying jobs here. So we need to do everything we can, I think, to make sure that segment of our economy functions well. The last budget that came out that the Senate developed, I think, did a lot for the manufacturing side of our economy.
It did, and I think the Senate, sometimes we get most of the time, if not all, we get the last word. That's one of the beauties of working in the Senate. Our budget was a sound budget, and we made some corrections, and so we worked with the governor's office, and we came up with a good plan, and there is never going to be a perfect plan. You have 424 people plus the governor, right?
Right.
So, we came up with a great budget, and we ended up with a surplus. We ended up being able to dole back a lot of money back to the towns.
Yes, we did.
And I saw a flyer the other day. Picture. At least I was smiling.
That's not usually the case if someone's putting out a hit piece on you.
Yeah, but it was like, how can you say that? I mean, it's so phony.
Yeah.
That we didn't cover, higher education for lowering tuition. That's malarkey. We sent $75 million back. We flat funded UNH. It's $75 million. $75 million.
That's a lot of dough.
We sent $73 million to the opioid situation. That's a 60% increase from the previous budget.
Right.
And it said that I didn't vote for, not a single Democrat voted for.
I know, that's the most amazing. I talked about that in the forum on Monday. To me, the partisanship issue is a key component to this campaign, a key aspect of politics in the United States in 2018. It shouldn't be, but you look at all around, top to bottom, partisanship's a big issue.
I guarantee if you did your homework, if anybody did their homework and they looked at I probably called the most roll calls up at the Senate this year, and probably even the previous year. Look at the roll calls and look how people voted, and you'll see how differently the Republicans voted versus the Democrats. It's lockstep with the Democrats, lockstep, and it's an anomaly if they're not voting the same way.
Yeah.
And the Republicans aren't always on the same page. And we'll debate each other, but you will not see the Democrats debating themselves.
Yeah.
I've yet to see it once. You'll never see them on the Senate floor or in the House debate each other. But if there's a floor fight, you'll see the libertarians, the conservatives, the moderates, and independents. They'll all be debating each other, and the Democrats will be sitting back watching the Donnybrook.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy. You will see bipartisanship, though, on occasion, and I was very successful with that this time around. It does happen, and it happens more than you think. Not on the Senate floor, not on the final vote, but a lot of things happen during committee. there are some bills that I couldn't vote for. Bottom line, I couldn't vote for, but I would help it to a certain level. And the Medicaid expansion was one of those. I voted for it up to the point where I thought what was a bad bill was much better.
Sure.
And that was all done in committee. On the Senate floor, I voted against it.
I had the same experience in Board of Aldermen a couple of times. In committee meeting, I was making amendments to make the bill better.
Right.
In the end, I said, I still can't support it, but if it passes, I know we have a better bill than we would have otherwise.
Right.
And I think sometimes we just have to do that. Let's talk about the budget, though, a little bit, because that was so instrumental to the economy.
Sure.
It contained business tax cuts in the form of enterprise and profits tax reductions. And essentially the state version of the Congressional Budget Office looked at that bill and said, well, if businesses don't react and our economy essentially stays the same, we could run with about a $90 million whole deficit in the budget. But what really happens when you make a tax change is behaviors do change. And the behavior that changed is that businesses were able to expand because of that reduction. And instead of there being a $90 million hole, we read recently that there's over a $300 million expansion of revenue. So this is revenue increase. So we lowered tax rates, business grew, and we have $300 million more than was projected.
Exactly, and we also put $100 million in the rainy day fund.
Yep.
Now some people say, why? The opposite, my counterpart, they want to spend it.
I know.
And the whole idea, look, Nashua's got a great bonding rate.
Yes.
You know,
AAA.
It's got a AAA bonding rate, and we can thank
Mr. Fredette.
Mr. Fredette for
Yes.
that, and he's
done a great job.
He's very meticulous with his investing, but the state doesn't have that.
Right.
So how do you get to that point? Well, you need the actual goal is it's a weird number, $152 million in the rainy day fund for a period of time, helps the state with its bonding so it can borrow at a lower rate. That's critical, and that could all get wiped out in one October freeze.
Yes, it could.
Right? We had that.
A bad storm a few
bad
years ago.
storm, you know, so have it in the rainy day fund, have it there for you know, I think Massachusetts has $1 billion.
Wow. Well,
So-
the rainy day fund really is that, and it should be used for that. It should be used as that reserve to bolster our bond rating or used to cover an emergency.
And we sent money back to the schools, right? $10 million to make them more secure. We sent back $65 million in like block grants so that you know for local property tax relief.
Okay.
Have
We haven't seen that yet,
Yeah.
by the way.
That part's up to your local people. If your taxes haven't gone down, we'll ask them, where did the $1.3 million for Nashua go?
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask.
The roads are being done, right? There was
The city bonded a lot of that road work, though, as you probably know.
of course. Oh, yeah.
It's an operating expense, but it became a bonding thing. It shouldn't be. But anyway.
The whole thing is that we sent money back. We sent $10 million back for the schools.
Yep.
$73 million for the opioid crisis. $65 million back in regular block grants. There's another one.
There's $57 million for developmentally disabled community.
And that's a critical one right there.
That's right.
And the money is getting there this time. It's actually been allocated, and in the previous administration, that didn't happen.
Right.
One area that you brought up, the disability community, I think it's really critical because one of the questions I think has to do with healthcare. And you know, what are you going to do to drive down costs? And there are a number of ideas, but I will be working on one idea in particular. I've got legislation being drafted. Commissioner Myers is going to be bringing the language. They're going to work it out. But it has to do with the DD community. Right now, they have health care, but they don't have dental. So if they don't do the routine cleaning and routine checkups, it just goes unmonitored. So what is more expensive, doing the cleanings and the regular checkups, or the emergency room and all the other things that are related to dental? So why aren't we taking a proactive way of cutting things, getting to preventative care instead of paying the high end? You pay me now, you pay me later.
Right.
So that is one of the bills that we're going to be introducing to,
Good.
and it should affect the cost of health care.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a couple of managed care companies that are going to be looking at that. WellCare is actually considering the dental part.
Okay, great.
So, but there are ways if you just work with the people and work
Yes.
together, it can be done.
Well, I think the key for me with a business background is that we have to keep our economy going, because by making sure first in the budget that our economy was going to be healthy and expanding, we're able to do all these things without raising taxes.
Right.
And that's very important, because we sent $73.5 million out to combat substance abuse.
Yeah.
$20 million for mental health.
Hey,
We raised it by 17. We raised DCYF by about 17%, more than in a decade.
So just take a second with the 73 million.
Okay.
All right, so that was allocated. We still have the problem. It's going to take some time
Yes,
for
it
it to
will.
work. It's not, we got this
not an overnight.
this McDonald's situation, where syndrome where everybody wants it right now. Hurry, hurry, hurry. It's going to take some time. Everybody's working on it.
Yep.
And I find it disingenuous to exploit the fact that it hasn't been solved. The Telegraph did quote me correctly about the Department of Bureaucracy.
Yes, yes.
The Department of Bureaucracy is not going to solve this.
Right.
There is a community responsibility. I remember taking my son Michael when we were homeschooling years and years and years ago to Sturbridge Village. And we walked out of one of the shops, and there was a fence outside the shop, and there was this guy, he's all dressed up, like a Quaker or whatever, pilgrim, and he's shoveling. And Michael just, hey, what are you shoveling? And without missing a beat, bureaucracy, son. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
And the Department of Bureaucracy is not going to solve it. Yes, we can fund it. We have ways of taking, of approaching it, but there needs to be community involvement. There needs to be education. People need to speak up. Yeah, I am my brother's keeper. Sorry, but that is part of the golden rule. That we need to be involved. You see something, say something. You lend a hand. Reach out, get involved. And
I saw something very interesting the other day that tracks with that. We're getting off the subject of the list, but that's okay, because this is a very, very complex problem. There's an editorial in the paper, the Telegraph, a few days ago. I think it was the Telegraph, and it talked about a new book that came out. The book was addressing the issue of the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah.
There's a loneliness epidemic, isolation epidemic. We have our smartphones, and it had a statistic in there, like an adult is looking at it every 4.7 seconds of their waking hours. I don't look at mine quite that often, but perhaps it's every 8 seconds, but it's pretty frequent. We're looking at those things all the time. And some people, young people especially, will crawl into those things, and that becomes their life. So out of this isolation that comes from the advancement of technology, we find people have virtual friends, not real friends, and that isolation, we're not made to be isolated. We don't isolate well.
Yeah.
And that can drive all kinds of issues. It can drive opioids, it can drive suicide, it can drive problems in school, it can drive all kinds of things that are really very significant societal problems. So those aren't easy to solve, but a community helps with those things. We have to make sure that we maintain the actual human-to-human contact, not just the electronic contact.
Education was brought up at some point, and I think I probably got off track, that's typical of me, but that's okay.
That's okay.
But school choice was a situation where I really think that is a way to answer that loneliness part. How does that do that? Well, if you have a child that is being pushed from grade to grade to grade to grade, and that child inside says, I don't fit in.
Right.
I can't read as well as the others. I don't play sports. I don't look as good. I don't do this. I don't do that. And all of a sudden, you feel that separation. And then, of course, it goes to that loneliness issue that you have, you mentioned. I really think that when a child doesn't feel as though they have a value, because they're not excelling, they don't see they're thriving like the other kids do.
Right.
That will contribute to a whole host of other problems up the road.
Yep.
And I'm just talking from personal experience.
Sure.
So my heart goes out to these kids, and one of the things is it's not that they're dumb. They learn different.
Right.
And sometimes the setting, when we send them to the public school, it's not necessarily a good fit.
Right.
It's a good for a lot of them.
For a lot of kids, it's fine.
We got a honor society child in our house, and she's just fantastic, and she's she's a field hockey goalie, and she's a really good one. So if you want one, give her a scholarship. But she's excelling, and everything's fine.
Right.
But for others that maybe they're musically, maybe they learn differently, that physically or verbally, or there's a whole host of other ways of educating. And I don't think the public schools are equipped to take care of every single need.
No, they're not. There's just too much variability within students. There's a story that I've heard. I've had someone on the show from the Micro Society Academy a couple of times, right down the road here. And there was a child who was in the Lead Street School. Lead Street School is generally our lowest performing school in the city.
Okay.
And our city schools overall are in the bottom third of the state. So this is a very low performing school anywhere in the state. And this child was languishing in this school. And we don't want to see anyone languish.
Nope.
But this child's parents applied and got on the waiting list for Micro Society Academy. It's a public school. It's free of charge.
Right.
And there was an opening, and this child, name was
charter
drawn.
school.
Public charter school.
Right.
Name got drawn and got into the school, and within 1 year, this child was testing with their entire class at grade level on whatever issues.
The light bulb goes off.
The light bulb goes off. So in reading and math, all the things, within 1 year, this kid caught up from wherever he was to being at grade level with his entire class.
That's what happened to me after I think it was around 14 or 15 years old. And so I can definitely relate to that. I saw a purpose. I saw how there were different ways that I learned. And I went to later on went to a private school in Litchfield, and saw a purpose for things, and my light bulb went off.
That's right. It's just different for everybody. I've been in public school and private school, and we didn't have charter schools when I was a kid.
Right.
Public and private, and some were better than others. A couple of different towns, and so every place that we went, we tried to find the best fit.
What did you think was one of the most? Where did you want to camp out on one of the questions?
I wanted to talk about at the event, of course. I wanted to talk about partisanship. I've knocked on a lot of doors, and I said at the event, and I can say it here to these folks today too, that when I ask someone what they're thinking, I'm not suggesting a topic. I'm saying, what do you think we need in Nashua? What do you think we need in New Hampshire? And the message I'm getting back is that people are sick and tired of the division. They're sick and tired of the partisanship, and it's been on its worst display from D.C. all the way down to, frankly, City Hall, right here. And they don't want to see it, and they're tired of that. We have too much division. Secondarily, people wanted to talk about taxes or jobs, but when asked, what's the most important thing to you, is partisanship. So I think we really have to work on solving that problem. And I mentioned on Monday that 3 things I think we need to do. So one is to remember who we work for.
Right.
And I think as you were describing the different factions or the different voting within the Republican Party, it's because we recognize, everyone there recognizes who their customer is, essentially, who their constituent is. And it's not an ideology. I think on the other side, their constituent is an ideology. They're working towards an ideology. I think on our side, we're working for the best solution to the folks at home. And if we focus as leaders on taking care of the folks at home, and if we speak truth about that, then we're going to clearly know what their issues are and what they need, and then we can decide and not get caught up in ideological battles.
Right. And you can stick to your principles and still get along with the other side.
Yes.
And, I just up at the Capitol yesterday and saw Senator Susie, and I asked her to help me co-sponsor a bill, if I get reelected, to help out the DD community. And she starts throwing off figures to me, and we're working together.
Great.
Tomorrow I'm going to a psychiatric unit to look at maybe the state having their own psychiatric unit for those committed civilly. It's going to be a bipartisan thing. So it does happen.
Yes.
The folks at home don't see that, and that's unfortunate. But it really, there's a lot of things that go on in a bipartisan way up there.
Good.
I do think there are people that like to exploit. Right? And, stepping back and being able to say, I'm stepping out of my party for a second. I'm a human being first. When the kids come up to the Capitol, I sing to them.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll get a question from one of the children. What are you? Are you Democrat or Republican? And I immediately, my first response is, I'm a human being first. And if you lose sight of that, then you lose part of yourself.
Right.
Don't lose sight of that, because as soon as you start looking at people in silos, you're not seeing the whole person.
Right.
And over time, you'll figure that out. There are people, though, that will exploit the differences when they're not actually being exploited between the two parties. I have 5 bills up there that was completely bipartisan. The Rape Shield Bill, protecting victims of rape, the death penalty bill. I had 2 energy bills, and there was another one. But anyway, the whole idea was it was completely bipartisan work to get them through. I've worked on the other side as well. It does happen, and I think it's unfortunate that whoever is on the side and on this side saying, hey,
Yeah.
you know what he said, you know what she said.
Yes, yeah, we got to stick to the bipartisan approach. I think that our side does that well. So
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to do. I also focused on the economy, which you've already spoken about. And I wanted to talk about housing too. Housing is an issue here in Nashua.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to just let the folks at home know about that we talked about a little bit on Monday, and you and I may have spoken about it before. I think that if the state can enact legislation that would enable, not force, but enable cities and towns to grant a tax exemption or tax credit for owner-occupied multifamilies, I think a city like Nashua could really get great benefit from that.
It creates an incentive, and we did do something for first-time home buyers as well. But a little here, a little there will go a long way.
It benefited me a lot when the first home I bought a multifamily home, and I rented out 2 units, lived in 1 unit, and it took care of my housing costs. So I didn't have the credit or the resources to borrow as much money as I needed for multifamily on my own income. But the bank considered the rental income as part of my qualifying income, and so I was able to buy that house. And then with the tax abatement from the city, then I was encouraged to stay there and to improve the property, and it lifts the area. So Nashua, they talk about the housing shortage. There are a lot of homes in Nashua, a lot of multifamily homes, but some of them are a little bit less high quality repair than others. And so I think to stimulate that, to give young people a reason to come here, to work in the jobs that we have in the high-tech industry, and to build their lives here, raise their families here, I think would be something good.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, we're out of time. Kevin, thank you very much for coming in. It goes fast. You know that from your show. I know it here too. So thank you very much. And folks, I want to thank you at home for tuning in too. We're just 3 weeks away from the election on November 6, 2018. I'm here with Senator Kevin Avard, who is incumbent senator for District 12. I would encourage you to look him up, and I would encourage you to vote for him in District 12. My name is David Schoneman. I'm running for District 13. We'll see you soon.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.